All right, man, peace. So now in the news, there's a story about a Catholic cardinal from Australia named George Pell. He's going to be brought to trial pertaining to child abuse offenses. So now let's see how they cover this story. I want to insert some aspects for brothers to look over and research on their own. But let's see how CBS presents this story.
The Catholic Church sexual abuse scandal, has reached the highest levels of the Vatican overnight, with charges against a top official.
I don't understand why this is a story. It's already been brought out that the Catholic Church, it's a policy of that institution to molest and rape young boys. But you know what? I want to go back to something.
His name is Cardinal. We are glad you're here. The Catholic Church scandal, abuse, sexual.
Now, brothers, you see the staff that George Pell has, that's known as a litus. L-I-T-U-U-S. All right, it's known as a litus. That is an offshoot or descendant of the Kemetic staff known as the crook. All right. In ancient Kemet, they had something called the crook and the flail that all the pharaohs and the high dignitaries would be buried with. Now that comes from Nimrod and his father Cush, or as they were known in Egypt as Narmer, Pharaoh Narmer, and Pharaoh Menes. I mentioned this on a previous video. Cush was known as Menes, right? The name Menes, M-E-N-E-S. It means the numberer, right? The name Narmer, it means leopard, all right? Because it's the name Nimrod means the subduer of the leopard, Narmer Marad, for you brothers who are into the scriptures and who are going to the Hebrew, right? The name Narmer means to subdue. It also means water or purification through water. All right, that's also where you get the practice of the pagan practice of baptism from. All right. That was a pagan practice. Water worship was a practice of the pagans. Now, when you go into the Gospels and John the Baptist was baptizing the chosen, that was in reference to receiving the Holy Spirit. All right. That was something different, but we'll go on to that another time. But what he has there is known as a litus. That's also that's the forerunner of what the Celts called the magic wand. All right, or what's known in the witchcraft circles as the magic wand. Basically, brothers, to give you a brief breakdown of it, as I said, it started with Cush and Nimrod, who were known as Menes and Narmer when they ruled Egypt as a co-regency. All right, they also ruled in Babylon as Marduk and Ninus. All right. Those were their nomenclatures when they ruled over in Babylon. The practices that they created that were populated amongst the other nations is spread from them to a people known as the Lydians. Right, the Lydians dwelt in what was known in the ancient world as Asia Minor, but we call it today Anatolia. All right, the Bible calls them Lud, L-U-D, right, or the Ludim. L-U-D-I-M. Now, the Lydians, they were great mariners, and they decided to depart, or a portion of them departed from Asia Minor, and they settled in a part of central Italy, and they're known in history as the Etruscans. All right, I'm going to cover the Etruscans in more depth, probably in another video when I go into ancient Rome, and who the ancient Romans were. I'll probably do that in another video. But the ancient, the Etruscans were a people of science, but they were also a people of astronomy and astrology. All right, and they brought the litus over with them, or the crook, as you say, and they used it to practice something known as augury. All right, A-U-G-U-R-Y. What is augury? Augury basically is prognostication or telling the future by watching the flight path of birds. They would hold the litus or the crook up in the air, and they would watch the flight of birds, and they would use it to predict the future. If they were wrong, they would get put to death. They also practiced something known as haruspex, Haruspex. Basically, that meant when they would sacrifice an animal, they would disembowel it, and they would look at the arrangement of its bowels and its liver, and they would use that to predict the future. All right. To make a long story short, the Etruscans were the first great empire in Italy, and they heavily influenced the Caucasians, who later on came there and settled in central Italy. I believe they were separated by something known as the Sylvian Forest. But the Etruscans, they were the ones who taught the Caucasians, who later on became or created what's known in history as Imperial Rome. They gave them the knowledge of building aqueducts, arches, sewers, so on and so forth. All right. And by the way, yes, the Etruscans were people of color. They were so-called, if they were around today, they would be known as being so-called black. All right. That's what they would be known as. They'd be known as being so-called black. All right. But they were a Shemitic stock. They were of Shemitic stock. They were the Ludim, or they were known in history as the Lydians. OK. But point being, they brought that item known as the lightus to Rome. Why do I bring that up? Because the Romans eventually used that. They used that staff known as the crook or the lightus in their practice when they carried on the Babylonian / Kemetic mystery school system and created what was known as the Roman Church, or the so-called Vatican Church, prior to trying to abduct the teachings of the scriptures and act as if they're representing the teachings of the scriptures. Rome, or the so-called Pope, was known as the Pontifex Maximus, meaning the Great Bridge. All right. The term Pontifex means to make a bridge. He is the bridge or the doorway. That's who the Pope represents. The Pope is the leader of the world, by the way. All world leaders report to the Pope, including the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, all the leading financial families. They report the Pope is the spiritual head of the earth. OK, that's what he is. But he has to rule in secrecy. Or I should say he's the spiritual leader of the earth. All right. Now, in inner London, you have the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and those elite families. They are the financial leaders of the earth. But they still defer to him on spiritual matters because he's viewed as the door. Right. That's why he has the name. Or that's why he is what's known as the vicar. Right. The vicar, meaning he is the fleshly manifestation of the god of this world, that being Janus, Janus. All right. Which is another term for Cush and Nimrod. All right. That's why Janus is depicted with the two faces, one looking to the left that has a big beard representing the father, and then another one looking to the right representing the son, Nimrod. They ruled in a co-regency in Egypt. OK. But like I was saying, that's really what the so-called Vatican Church is all about. In Rome, it sits on the 7 hills. All right. So when the scriptures talk about the 7 heads and the 10 horns, the 7 heads is talking about the 7 hills that the Vatican Church sits on. When you look at the headdress that he wears, the headdress is for the fish god Dagon. All right. Dagon. That is where his headpiece comes from. And the staff represents the crook or the lightus, which he got from the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system through the Etruscans. All right. It has nothing to do with the scriptures at all whatsoever. That's the point. But let's continue on.
Sexual abuse scandal, has reached the highest levels of the Vatican overnight.
Now, you see George Pell there with Pope Francis. They recently were caught up in a huge child blood sacrifice scandal, which they've kept away from the public, known as the Ninth Circle. All right. And I advise you, brothers, to please look that up. All right. They recovered a document from the Vatican archives known as magisterial privilege. And in magisterial privilege, it is proved that every pope, when he becomes pope, is required to engage in child sacrifice and the drinking of that child's blood. All right. Don't take my word for it. Look it up for yourself. It's known as magisterial privilege. All right. Every pope, John Paul II, Pope Ratzinger, this guy, Pope Francis, all the way going back to 1773. Okay, that's at least the record that they have of how far it goes back. It goes back to the Jesuits. For those of you who don't know, the Jesuit order is basically the Vatican's version of the CIA. Their job is to go all across the earth, starting wars, starting conflicts, starting revolutions. They're involved in almost everything, particularly in South America. A lot of those socialist revolutions that you had there with the juntas in Argentina, the Sandinistas in Panama, all with Manuel Noriega and a lot of those guys. All of that has to do with the Jesuits. The Jesuits are the ones who are advising them. That's where Pope Francis got his start, in Argentina, with the juntas. When that whole thing went down, that socialist revolution down there, he was involved with trafficking the children of a lot of the dead officials and politicians into the child sex slave rings. Now they recently had a court hearing in Brussels in regards to the evidence under magisterial privilege that stated that all those men were engaging in child ritual sacrifice and pederasty, pedophilia. And Pope Ratzinger was forced to step down in 2013. They lie and tell you that he stepped down because he was old and he was tired. That's a lie. The reason why he stepped down was because there was so much damning evidence that he was engaging in child ritual sacrifice and blood drinking, as well as this guy, Pope Francis. He's nothing but the devil. All right. Nothing but the devil. That's all he is, as well as Pope John Paul II. For those of you who don't know, Pope John Paul II, he got his start as a chemist in a German chemical cartel known as IG Farben. He was involved with the production of a poisonous gas known as Zyklon B. Zyklon B was the poisonous gas that was used to kill people in the concentration camps. All right. He was one of the main chemists who was making that toxin and selling it to the Nazis. All right. After World War II, to escape being charged, he ran to the Catholic Church and joined it because he knew he could hide there, because the Catholic Church, they were the ones who were helping the Nazis out. OK, for those of you who don't know, Mein Kampf, which is Hitler's Mein Kampf is basically Hitler's introduction to his basic beliefs and tenets regarding the Nazi Socialist Party's tenets and their beliefs. It wasn't even written by Hitler. It was written by a Jesuit priest named Father Steinfli. All right. Last name S as in Sam, T as in Thomas, A-E, M as in Michael, P as in Peter, F-L-E. Look him up yourself. He's the man who wrote Mein Kampf, not Hitler. All right. Like I said, Hitler was an asset. Hitler was a offspring of the Rothschilds. His real last name was Schicklgruber. OK. His grandfather, Alois Schicklgruber, was the illegitimate son of a Rothschild. Okay. Hitler was an asset. They used him to destabilize Germany so that they could create a pretext to give the state of Israel back to the Caucasian Jews, or to the Caucasian Jews, so that they could move there. All right. What's known as the British Mandate. That's the main reason why Hitler was brought into power. They already knew that they were going to bring Hitler in there at the Treaty of Versailles. That's why they put such hard and harsh economic stipulations on Germany after they lost World War I. They plunged them into such deep debt. They already knew that it was going to lead to World War II. All right. I forgot who it was who was on record as saying, this is not a peace treaty. This is a ceasefire for 20 years. All right. That's what that gentleman said. But his name skips my mind. If I remember his name, I will of course I will mention it. But let's go back into Father George Pell and see what he's talking about here.
With charges against a top official. His name is Cardinal George Pell. He faces multiple criminal charges in Australia for alleged sexual assault that was committed, allegedly, decades ago.
Gail, don't be stealing my words. All right? Don't be stealing allegedly from me. That's my shit. But yes, George Pell, he's been doing that. That's part of what they do in the Catholic Church, which is nothing more than the modern day Kemetic Babylonian mystery school system. They engage in pederasty. Like I said, it goes back to Cush and Nimrod. Cush became known as Ptah Min. All right. Ptah Min is always He's always depicted with the erect phallus. That god became known in Greece as Pan, P-A-N. And of course, Pan is the god of pederasty, man-boy love. All right. That's what they do in the catacombs. That's what they do underground. They can't let you know what they're really about. All right. They worship the god of blood sacrifice, Baal, also known as Nimrod. Okay. That is what they do. That's what they adhere to. And all the world leaders are behind it. All right. They have a lot of blood sacrifice rituals in Canada. They have a lot of blood sacrifice rituals in South Dakota. All right. There's some suspicion that Adrian Peterson's son, the one who was killed, may have been a blood ritual sacrifice over there in South Dakota. A lot of blood ritual sacrifices go on there. Over in Australia, where George Pell is from, not only do they sacrifice a lot of children there, but they engage in something called, I'm trying to remember the exact name of it. Kathy O'Brien mentioned it in her book, Transformation of America. And I'm trying to remember if it's called The Game. I believe it's called The Game. Basically, in The Game, you have a lot of affluent world leaders. And what they'll do is they'll meet up in a certain country, sometimes the Netherlands, sometimes France, sometimes Australia, or parts of the United States or Canada, someplace relatively barren. And what they'll do is they'll take children that are in foster homes or foster centers that have been put under the MKUltra experimentation, and they'll release them out into the woods naked. And these top political leaders will track them down, or top financiers or top business people around the world will track them down, shoot them, and they'll cut off their privates and hold them up in the air and sometimes eat them raw, believe it or not. All right. Supposedly George Soros, the Caucasian Jew who was behind the Black Lives Matter movement, he was spotted at one of these events. He also was spotted at a child sacrifice ritual. All right. They have a major MKUltra child sex slave trafficking ring and child hunting ring down there in Australia. I remember Ms. Kathy O'Brien mentioned Ronald Reagan as being a major participant, as well as George Bush and Dick Cheney as being major participants in those child hunting parties. All right. A lot of you brothers really don't know. Y'all have no idea what you're dealing with. Like, a lot of you brothers try to come on and argue with me about the Bible. Brothers, the Catholic Church has nothing to do with the Bible, man. All right. That's why I'm going to start this Bible series, because y'all think that when y'all affiliate the church with the Bible, the Catholic Church has nothing to do with the Bible. The Catholic Church is a direct offshoot from the Babylonian and Kemetic system. That's what it is. That's why the Pope is known as the Vicar. He is the fleshly manifestation of Nimrod. He is the bridge, Nimrod and Cush, because Cush was the man who, once again, he's the man who taught all nations how to rebel against the Most High. He's the man who tried to reinvigorate the philosophies of the world before the flood that led to man's destruction. All right. Once again, when you look at this guy's headdress, which the Pope also wears, that's the fish head of Dagon. Dagon is Nimrod. Why is that? Because Dagon is the fish god. It says that when they killed Osiris, they let him out into the waters. He was reborn. All right. Sometimes he's known as Horus. Sometimes he's known as Tammuz, the god of vegetation. Sometimes he's known as Dagon. Dagon was the god of the Philistines. He was not the god. He was not the god venerated by the Israelites. All right. I mean, but that's okay. I'm going to cover all this on this channel. Let's see what else they got to say. And before I forget, that dude, Pope John Paul II, like I said, not only was he involved with a chemical cartel, a Nazi chemical cartel named IG Farben, and IG Farben is a major talking point. IG Farben was a chemical cartel. They were involved with Standard Oil. Basically, IG Farben invented a process called hydrogenation. And what they were able to do, they were able to take coal and turn it into fuel, all right, to power the Nazi war machine. They were in business with Standard Oil, owned by John D. Rockefeller, all right? They were in direct business with them. an American organization. So, yes, the Standard Oil helped the Nazis, as well as Ford Motor Company. A lot of other American companies, they financed the Nazis. Bush, Prescott Bush with the Brown and Harriman banking company. I believe they were known as Harriman and Co. at the time. I don't believe that they were Brown and Harriman yet, but we'll cover them when we cover the Bushes. But yeah, they helped finance the Nazis. All that, man. 90% of the stuff that they talk about and that they tell you about as far as conventional history is bullshit, brothers. That's why you have to have faith. See, the so-called black man, I don't understand y'all when y'all talk about that you're atheists. The so-called black man is a direct reflection of the Most High. All right? That's why he said he made you from the dust of the ground, from the mud of the ground. Right? You're literally a manifestation of the earth. You're the major creation that he made. That's why you're supposed to judge the earth. Like in Psalms 82, and when he said, that he told us that we were gods. The term God means judge. Right? For you to be a judge, you have to know the law. You have to know the right thing. That's why I get on these tinfoil hat dudes, man, and these so-called black power dudes, because they just talk shit, but they don't even know what to do. All right? But yeah, anyway, back to Pope John Paul II. That dude was making Zyklon B gas for the Nazis. All right? And he ran into the Catholic Church to escape being put on trial in Nuremberg. They protected him in the Catholic Church, and he became a bishop. I believe he was the fastest bishop. He was, he had the quickest rise to bishop ever. And then the man became the Pope 30 days. I believe it was 30 days after he became a top bishop. I'm trying to remember the exact process, how he escalated. But they poisoned John Paul I. All right. They poisoned him so that John Paul II could become Pope. And one of John Paul II's best friends was a man named Wolf Schmunis. You could read about this in a book by William Cooper named Behold the Pale Horse. One of John Paul II's best friends was a man named Wolf Schmunis. Who was Wolf Schmunis? He was a Polish expatriate during World War II. He went to Siberia. He also became a doctor, a physician, chemist, and he was the one who helped to unleash AIDS on the American population in trials from 1978 to 1981. All of a sudden, the man dropped dead in 1982. And they claimed that it was because he got sick. No, that after he released that plague on the population, they said, we got to cover up all our tracks and we got to get rid of him. All right. But the whole AIDS thing, that's a whole nother topic for another day that I'll cover in regards to him and Robert Gallo and a lot of the other men that they used to genetically engineer that virus. Now, let's see what else they're talking about here.
The Cardinal is a top advisor to Pope Francis, who has promised zero tolerance of sex abuse.
Zero tolerance of sex abuse if he's not involved with it also. That's probably what he's mad about. He said, damn, you getting all that? How come you ain't called me? And the reason why they call George Pell a top advisor is because that's what the term cardinal means. All right. Once again, one of the titles for the Pope, remember, he's like Janus. Janus means the doorway. The term cardinal, it comes from a Latin word cardo. It means the hinge. All right. So all of his cardinals are like hinges on the door. You understand? That is what the term Janus means. It means the doorway. I've gone over this multiple times already. And if you ever notice, they wear in the so-called Catholic Church, they wear yarmulkes. All right. They wear yarmulkes just like the Caucasian Jews do. Why is that? Because they worship and believe in the same God. They worship and follow the same system. That is the Babylonian mystery school system. All right? That is what they adhere to. But let's continue on here.
Pell will take a leave of absence while he fights the charges.
This morning, Cardinal Pell says he is innocent. Seth Doan is in Rome with the allegations rocking the Vatican today. Seth, good morning.
I don't know why they're rocking the Vatican. They've been known about this. They've been doing this for for thousands of years already. All right. And by the way, the term Vatican means the house of serpents. OK, the serpent god is the same as the sun god. For those of you guys who don't know, the serpent is a symbol for great wisdom. All right. The sun, the veneration of the sun, is a metaphor for being enlightened. Okay? Now, there's enlightenment on the left-hand side and there's enlightenment on the right-hand side. Every symbol has a left-hand side understanding and a right-hand side understanding. But, you know, that's something that we can touch on later.
Good morning. In this elite group of cardinals considered the so-called princes of the church.
You heard that? Like I said, cardinals. Cardo, the hinges, they are his princes. Why would he call them princes? Unless the Pope represents a king. All right? That is why these other countries, they're not allowed to have titles of nobility, titles of royalty. The Pope is recognized as the king of the earth, the king of the planet Earth. All right? He represents the so-called, quote-unquote, Antichrist. Okay?
Church, Cardinal Pell is at the very top, considered one of the closest advisors to Pope Francis. So these charges this morning are sending shockwaves through the Catholic Church.
So let me get this straight. George Pell is one of the closest confidants of the Pope, but they're not doing the same thing. Doesn't the Bible tell you can two walk together unless they be in agreement? Right? When, you know, if you're walking down the street with your homeboy and the cops run up on your homeboy, aren't they taking you in with your homeboy because they figure you're doing the same shit he's doing?
The 76-year-old cardinal was reflective but forceful this morning, railing against what he said was nearly 2 years of relentless character assassination.
I'm innocent of these charges.
I'm guilty of other charges, but innocent of these.
They are false. The whole idea of sexual abuse is abhorrent to me.
With the lights on. Now, if they're off, that's another matter.
Australian police did not provide any specific details of the multiple charges.
There he goes again with the lightus and the Dagon fish headpiece. All right? All of that comes from the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system, right? Brought over by the Etruscans.
Charges of sexual assault. Cardinal George.
Brought over to Rome by the Etruscans, I should say. Let me specify that. And let me also say, Nimrod also ruled in Rome as Saturn. All right? As the god Saturn. Rome, before it was known as Rome, was known as Saturnia.
George Pell has been in charge of reforming church finances, but for years has faced allegations that he did not properly deal with clergy sex abuse in Australia.
Of course, because he was down with it. They take all those little kids in those foster homes, you know, and it's crazy, man. That's why, you know, don't have children if you don't want to take care of them. Because all type of hell comes across on these children, man.
He was questioned by a commission investigating the church's response to abuse via video link from Rome.
With the experience of 40 years later, certainly I would agree that I should have done more.
Why do you need the experience of 40 years later? Wasn't it a serious matter then?
Yes, but people had a different attitude to them.
Pell told
Oh, yeah, people had a different attitude then. It was all right to molest children back then. Now, you see right above his head, they have that big Pope headpiece and the two keys crossing. That's for Janus and Sybil, all right? A.K.A. Cush and Semiramis, the Father God and the Mother Goddess, all right? They carry the keys. They're also known as, I believe it's Petulchius and Clusius, or the opener and the shutter, all right? You need the keys. Janus, all right? The door. Janitor, all right? The janitor has all the keys. You understand?
Told reporters this morning that he has been in regular contact with Pope Francis.
The Holy Father regularly.
They call him the Holy Father, right? They call the Pope the Holy Father. All right? Now, didn't Christ say, call no man your father but him who is in heaven? Once again, the church system has nothing to do with the scriptures. Or, you know, for you brothers who don't really know what's going on or who don't know, you know, or don't understand the difference. Okay? I don't want to castigate you brothers too much because if you don't know, you don't know. But a lot of you guys make presumptive statements and, you know, you don't really know what you're talking about.
Informed
who has granted him leave to return to Australia for his day in court.
This dude, Pope Francis, is the pure devil. Like I said, he's under investigation in Brussels, or was. And they're over there killing people who are speaking out about this. There was a woman over there in Canada who spoke out about how children are disappearing from Canada. Queen Elizabeth had a man named Vivian Cunningham. Look him up. Vivian Cunningham had this man detained because he questioned why I think it was 10 children disappeared under her watch. Why is that? Because she was having them ritually sacrificed. Just like that big building that they burnt up, that was nothing but a sacrifice, fire worship over there in England, I think last week over there in London, where they had that big high-rise building go up in flames, man. This dude is the damn devil. It's Pope Francis.
In mid-July. How big of a blow are these charges to the Catholic Church?
This is a major blow.
Robert Mickens with Catholic publication La Croix International has been covering the Vatican for 25 years.
You have to understand, the Vatican language is always going to be very much more conciliatory. Cardinal Pell said the Pope has given him a leave of absence. It's very likely that the Pope stood him down.
He already knows, all right? When they sacrifice those children, when they blood sacrifice them, it's known as the Black Mass, all right? I think that Johnny Depp did a movie. I remember I did a video about Johnny Depp. He's nothing but a Project Bluebird, MK asset. They make a lot of these titles for these movies. I know the movie that he did, it wasn't about the church. It was about a Irish gangster from Boston. But a lot of times they title these movies to allude to the true belief system of the planet Earth. Like Matt Damon had a movie called Soul Invictus. It came out a few years ago. It was about soccer. But Soul Invictus means the unconquerable sun. All right, it's in reference to the god Mithras, who was just another manifestation for Nimrod. All right, or Heru, whatever you want to call him. All right, the term just means Heru or hero or pharaoh. They're all the same words. They just mean shepherd king. Okay, that's what it means.
And that leave of absence, according to the Vatican, is effective immediately. A leave of absence is quite significant for a priest. It is even more serious for a cardinal, and for such a close friend and advisor of Pope Francis, it is a shock. Nora?
All right, Seth Doan in Rome, thank you so much.
Ain't nothing shocking about that shit. He's out there ritually killing and raping little boys. That's what they do. It's known as pederasty. All right? Man-boy love. I don't know how many times I got to go over this. That's what they're all into, all right? Including these royal families. Prince Bernard from the Netherlands, Queen Elizabeth II, that witch, all right? And her Nazi ties and her Nazi family. They're all into it. The Bushes, the Reagans, or Reagan, I should say. All of them is into it. Kennedy was running around having sex with little MK Ultra little girls, 10, 11 years old. John F. Kennedy, yes, he was, all right? But, yeah, man, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Like I said, Ratzinger was forced to step down because they had so much evidence on him. All right. A lot of the people in the media, some of them are not aware of what's going on, and they're prosecuting these people. Like I said, they had a court case over in Brussels back in 2013. Y'all can look it up. It's called the Ninth Circle. They go around sacrificing and killing young children. After they molest them, they kill them, and then they drink their blood. All right. Every new pope must drink the blood of a sacrificed child. OK, they worship the god known as Baal. It's just another manifestation of Nimrod. The Baal is a bull-headed god from from the Semitic cultures, from the Canaanite culture. All right. So that's what's going on in regards to that whole Catholic thing. But anyway, I'm sure we're going to touch on this again, brothers. I hope I didn't miss anything. I'm trying to think if I missed anything right now before I sign off on this one, because this one is very, very important. I don't believe I did. But like I said, brothers, look up magisterial privilege. All right. That is a document that states that all new popes must sacrifice a child and drink blood. OK, all of them. All right. Jesuits, nothing but the Vatican version of the CIA. Anyway, brothers, look that up. Peace.